Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Kiwi Bert C. Won't fix the ramp but give me the ability to close it? Okay then, let's jump right in. A bit of a long read, but there's a bit of context. A few years ago, I ended up working at a remote worksite. The crew I worked with had multiple jobs, one of which was unloading the truck that came in once a week with all of the site's food. The unloading area was at the back of the kitchen and hadn't been designed well originally. It was an uneven gravel ramp that led up to a roughly 4-foot loading dock. In an ideal world, the truck would be able to back up to the loading dock and the job would be reasonably easy. However, the ramp also wasn't very wide. There was a dog leg in the run up to it, and also, the truck would be at an angle, so moving the pallets of food would be tough. So the workaround was to have a forklift take the food from the truck, drive up the gravel ramp, and drop the food on the dock. When I first got there, we had a forklift operator who had worked with a forklift for years. He was good, like really good. He made it seem easy. This wasn't my first job working around forklifts, and I really appreciated how good this guy was. I'm not sure many others, especially management, realized that he made this short but tricky run in the forklift look way easier than it actually was. He left, and management scrambled to get another guy licensed to drive the forklift. This guy didn't have the experience and he struggled. He lost a load off his forks at one point, and it was kinda scary. He was a yes man, and there wasn't many other options, so he persevered. A lot of us were worried it was just a matter of time before he tipped the forklift over the edge of the ramp. The solution would have been to redesign the ramp or at least pave it. The gravel was a large part of the problem. It was a little thick, so the tires would spin, a bit off kilter, and it would develop potholes. The forklift needed to get a run up to carry speed up this ramp. That's how bad it was. We complained, but the company didn't want to do anything because they were building a new kitchen on the other side of the ramp, so this one was going to be decommissioned. However, there had been zero work done on the new kitchen in the 3 to 4 months I'd been there. This remote site was in Australia, and they have some pretty strict health and safety laws there. Companies will often have you fill out cards every day of what we saw that was maybe dangerous. I filled out one for this ramp every single week we had to use it, but they didn't do anything. The system was really there to cover themselves. You know it was dangerous, it says it here on the card, so why did you keep doing the thing? While also expecting us to keep doing the thing, how else were we going to get the food inside? However, one of the other rules pretty much gave the right for any employer to tag out something that isn't safe. The company can't overrule this, as if they do, then something happens, it's on them. These tags are normally used with machinery. The machine is broken, can't be used until it's fixed. The tag out system is not really designed for an area. Cue malicious compliance. The ramp is broken and dangerous. I decided I'm going to tag it out. I collected some cones and ropes and tagged it out. Went straight into the office to tell management what I did. Their faces were priceless. They had a week to come up with a solution, as I did this immediately after we'd unloaded the weekly food drop. At first, they told us that from now on, we'd have to walk the boxes of food up to the storage areas. This was obviously an attempt to turn the other crew members on me. However, the cooks stopped that idea dead. The weather was hot, the majority of the food was chilled or frozen, we were only so many, there would have been lots of food waste. So after a day or so, they got to work putting in a paved path for the forklift. It was the bare minimum they would do because they were building a new kitchen, but apparently it cost them $7,000 and pulled guys away from other duties to do it. Needless to say, I was not a popular person, and I heard that some of management wanted to fire me, but there wasn't anything they could do. I left 2 months later anyway. OP, I'm of the opinion that what you did could save a life. That forklift driver was taking their lives in their own hands every time they went up that gravel path. So having it paved made it a lot more safe for everybody using that area. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Bill's Bayou. You told me that's not my job. I'm not supposed to help the students. Let's jump right in. 1994 was notable for me as it was when I had found a much-needed job and I discovered the internet. This was not the flashy multimedia juggernaut where everything is accessible through browsers and apps. This was back when text was king, when the world was opening up to us in 24 rows and 80 columns. Only computer geeks had access to instant news from Japan, and we did it through protocols like Gopher, Usenet, IRC, FTP, and yes, email. The much-needed job came before my current employer moved out of town and would lay off anyone who didn't want to move from New Orleans to Tampa, Florida. A local university hired me as a programmer. My duties were limited to writing and modifying administrative systems in COBOL, using dumb terminals, and no campus-wide LAN. There would be no reason for me to work with the students. This would be made very clear to me a few years later. Access to the internet, or as we called it back then, internet, sans definite article, was a major perk to the job. It came as part of working for a university, but had nothing to do with our jobs in MIS, what we used to call IT before we called it IT. The student computer lab was next to MIS, which meant that I spent time before and after work, and at lunch, learning as much as I could. It was a wild and wonderful time for the internet. Expanding your reach meant digging around in FTP folders and finding the right people in chat rooms. Security was a joke and a joy. Within months, I knew more than most of my coworkers. Many knew nothing. Their judgment of me was that I was playing around in the labs. This label was earned in spite of the fact that I had used my playtime to improve the file transfer performance of the only PC connected to a modem by an order of magnitude. I was also connecting with other users on the same COBOL products we were using and bringing solutions to my department. Student computer labs were part of the Arts and Science College. MIS was under finance. Their proximity to MIS was due to their systems requiring the same climate control as the mainframe. The woman in charge of the student labs, call her Jane, was proficient but only knew enough to keep the labs operational. Digging deep into FTP, Gopher, and such was the responsibility of ANS. Less than 2 years after starting, Jane was coming to me when students would have problems with internet, software, and protocols. I really enjoyed helping the students because their problems helped me learn even more about the internet. This went on for about a year before the bosses took notice. The MIS director, whose office looked out into the MIS front lobby, was a stickler for keeping to a rigid schedule of work. Likewise, our responsibilities were the only things that should occupy our time. Watching me come and go at Jane's bidding once or twice a week had rubbed him the wrong way. He communicated his displeasure with my manager, who likewise took offense that I would think to leave my desk to help the students. My manager's words were something to the effect of, "I don't want to see you helping Jane or the students during working hours. You can help them on your own time or at lunch. I don't want to see you in the student lab when you should be in your office doing your job." She was very direct and made sure I understood the seriousness of the situation. I complied and let Jane know what had happened. She no longer came by my office, but would still try to catch me if she saw me in the labs. Within a few years, the computer labs were moved under the MIS umbrella, and we went from being called Management Information Systems to Information Technology. Jane came into the fold. She had a backup, call him Jack, who was still teaching at the time. One day, my manager comes into my office. Cue malicious compliance. "There are a couple of students out here having problems in the lab." "Okay, where's Jane?" "Off today, I need you to help the students." "Did you try Jack? He's teaching." "Well, I'm busy working on Project du jour." "You can do that later. Come help these students, stop being difficult." Smiling and being difficult. "Are you saying you need me to help the students when I'm supposed to be working?" Manager's getting icy. "Yes, you coming?" "So it is part of my job." "When I say it is, yes." "Well, okay then." From time to time, students were actually shown to my office for assistance. In business, one of the things that kills a company is stovepipes. Departments do not communicate laterally unless it has been approved by the vertical channels. Because I was under MIS, which was under finance, my exposure to the rest of the university was done through the graces of managers above me. My position was, and still is, that the students are the only reason we exist, and it was up to everyone to make sure they got the help they needed. Where did I develop that position? My MBA classes at the very university that employs me. Always let your managers know what you're doing, but if someone can get help for a student through a lateral action, do it. After I was freed of my MIS shackles, there came a day when the director of MIS caught me coming in late from lunch. He asked me why I was late from lunch. I was forgiven when I explained that I found a lost student in the lobby of our building and took them to the correct office in a different building. He actually was a great boss with a great sense of humor. He just had some rigid quirks about schedules and neckties for men. Last December marked 28 years of employment. The neckties are gone and I now wear jeans and Western boots. I'm probably going to show my age here, but I remember dialing into bulletin board systems before the internet was really a huge deal. I also remember a time when we went and played outside as much as we could. But these days, there's a park right behind my house, and there's barely any kids in it, ever. It's kinda disheartening. I know the internet has brought us a lot of wonderful things, but it also makes me feel like we're a slave to our screens. What do you guys think? I'd love to see your comments down below. Our next story today comes to us from Grey Socks, Ground Rent Charge. Let's jump right in. I bought a house in Manchester, UK, which I thought was freehold, but turned out to have an ancient ground rent, sort of like a leasehold. This ground rent was the grand sum of £4 per year. For the first few years, I received a hand-typed bill once per year, as the ground rent was owned by an elderly lady. Presumably, the ground rent was an old family asset. I paid the bill promptly by check. After all, it was only £4. Now, I think the elderly lady died because for a while the charge was collected by the legal company in charge of her estate. However, the ground rent was then sold to a large company whose primary business was debt collection and who were aggressive about collecting the rent quarterly. Still, that was not really a problem, but I was annoyed enough at having to send 4 checks for £1.50 a year to investigate further, with a view to purchasing the whole thing myself. I found out that firstly, all of these ancient ground rents would be annulled in 2020, or somewhere around then, so there wasn't actually much to pay if I wanted to purchase the whole thing. I think it was about £80. I also found out that under the ancient law pertaining to these ground rents, that I had to pay the fee or give them produce from the land to the value of the fee. I told you it was ancient. Additionally, the ground rent holder had to collect the rent that is at the door in person. So next time the new company sent me the vaguely threatening bill, I simply sent them a letter offering produce from my garden to the value of the fee. I had some nice tomatoes at the time, so offered them those, and left it to them to decide when they wished to collect. Of course, the company never came to collect any tomatoes and tried to get me to send the money to them and threaten legal action, etc. However, once I sent another letter to their legal guy, pointing him to the law on the matter, I then received a one-off offer to buy the entire ground rent for £25, which I did. A good result, as I was completely happy with buying at the market price of £80. I was reading through the comments on this story and there was some really interesting stuff down there. One of them says, "Gotta love antiquated laws. Where I live, we have a set of laws known as the Innkeepers Act. One of the clauses is in regard to payment. If you fail to pay for your room, the innkeeper retains the right to claim your horse." That would be like going to a hotel these days, and if you didn't pay for your room, they'd have the right to take your car. No. Our next story today comes to us from Dodie Melody. "You need to get your numbers up ASAP, no exceptions." Let's jump right in. This happened a few years ago. At the time, I was working for a local ISP, internet service provider, in one of their shops. My job was basically tech support on the spot, data transfer from devices, opening tickets for customers for their outages and the sort. Among my duties, I had to sell phone equipment such as cases, chargers, etc. I really liked my job. The customers were somewhat nice, being that they're mostly older people who didn't know how to use their device. I enjoyed helping them, and in return, they'd stop by with pastries from local bakeries. I had this one boss who was a stickler for numbers. Now, he wasn't necessarily a bad boss, but his unhinged obsession with our targets was weird. The man could not comprehend that sales were down because no people were coming in. Weird guy. Anyway, one day he calls me up to his office and has this strange one-on-one talk with me how I need to get my sales numbers up even though I don't work in sales. I asked him if he had a certain idea how I should do this, seeing as most of my clientele are older people who don't need selfie sticks, external batteries, and stuff like that. Figure it out, offer it to everyone, no exceptions. A few weeks go by and he calls me up to his office again for what I thought would be a one-on-one again, but lo and behold, he needs a favor. His dad was in town, and he would need me to stay an extra paid hour to transfer data from his dad's old phone to a new one because he had an important meeting to attend. Sure thing, boss. His dad comes in, and this man is such a good guy. We started talking and laughing about sports, cars, and other different stuff. And then it hit me. Cue malicious compliance. I offered this man everything, stuffed his bag with all of the goodies, and the final bill came up to around $200 instead of free. He walked out happy. My boss, on the other hand, wasn't so cheerful. Never again was my productivity questioned. I quit a few months later. Well, what can we say about this one besides the fact that sometimes the malicious compliance is subtle, but this time it is apparent. Our last story today comes to us from, got him, BDN Jr. My work short-term disability insurance demands I have to use any available vacation time instead of claiming benefits for a scheduled surgery. Okay, allow me to fix this issue by taking 55 consecutive days off with pay. Let's jump right in. So my surgery was scheduled a month out and I intended to use my vacation after the surgery. But no, absolutely can't do that, because if I have PTO available to me, I have to use that before I can claim short-term disability, that of which I am paying $7 a week for. I'll play ball, scheduled my almost 2 weeks vacation according to my surgery and recovery. Oh no, surgery had a scheduling conflict. Guess I have to reschedule, but darn, my vacation time is already approved for the original date. It would surely be an inconvenience to reschedule my approved vacation time. Guess I won't have any PTO available for my surgery, and they'll just have to pay my short-term disability that is conveniently scheduled for the day after my vacation ends. Now, this part was just straight up fantastic timing. So I'm like 2 weeks out from my vacation and surgery, get a little sick, get tested just in case, and I'll be damned, I'm positive. 10 days off with pay implemented, with last day of quarantine leading to my first day of approved vacation time. So I'm thinking, my end of the year is coming up, and I'm about to be given additional vacation, and I would hate to have this headache again in the future of being unable to use my short-term disability benefits again if I have a medical problem. Schedule 3 weeks vacation time to begin right after surgery and recovery. And because my surgery and recovery ends on the second day of my year, they can't force me to use it instead of paying me the benefits, because I won't have any vacation available at the time of short-term disability leave starting. So 10 days off for quarantine, 8 days vacation, which equals to 10 days off with the weekend, 2 weeks for surgery plus recovery, then my 3 weeks vacation approved to start the second day it's made available to me. I am a rule-abiding employee. I'm very sure corporate wants my head on a platter, but unfortunately for them, it's all already approved to their standards. It's a retail job too. I'm like 15 days into my paid leave, and my coworkers are straight up not having a good time. F 'em. That time off that you have might also be a really good time to start looking for another job, because this one doesn't sound all that great. This reminds me of when I used to work in a call center. There was one that had a really weird point system. When you took a day off and it was unexplained, you lost a point, blah blah blah, but you got them back after 3 months or 6 months depending on whether it was a full point or a half point. But what that meant was that you could take about 35 days off over the course of the year, and there was nothing the company could do about it. They did change that policy, but it was after I left. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.